Is rebel music in Cyberpunk 2077 ironic? A hyper-niche question that is surprisingly complex to answer. But first, what is Cyberpunk 2077? What is rebel music? And where do they meet?
Wake the fuck up, samurai. We have a city to burn.
Cyberpunk 2077, released in 2020, is a role-playing action game set in the fictional city of Night City, developed by CD Projekt Red and based off the Cyberpunk tabletop game developed by Mike Pondsmith. Cyberpunk itself is its own genre of dystopian future where hyper-advanced technology and sleek corporate cyber-style meet rough, violent, urban punk aesthetics with a huge side helping of corporate colonialism. If you're a fan of Blade Runner or Altered Carbon, then you're a fan of Cyberpunk. Okay, so what is rebel music? This part is a bit harder to define. A quick Google search comes up with two consistent answers. A Bob Marley album, or Irish rebel music.
While Britannia songs with the great big guns sailing.
These are both good examples of rebel music, even if there are no similarities between their genres. But what if that's the point? There is no definition of rebel music, no standardized genre. Any genre of music could be rebel music, it really is just dependent on the context, whether the context is fighting the British or futuristic megacorporations. You know what cyberpunk is, and we have a very loose definition of rebel music. Where's the crossover point? We could end this early by saying, well, if any music can be rebel music, then any music in Cyberpunk can be rebel music. But the game devs, and me, are not that lazy. A lot of the in-game music is rebel music, but not just because context. No, weaved through the majority of the rebel music in the game is a thread of counterculture. In the Encyclopaedia of Language and Linguistics, author C. Cutler describes counterculture as radical groups of people who reject established social values and practices and who embrace a lifestyle opposed to the mainstream. Whether it's hard and loud punk music from the in-game band Samurai or the rhythmic electronic tracks you can hear on the radio, counterculture is present. These genres were part of counterculture movements in real life and they maintain that standing in Cyberpunk. So Cyberpunk has rebel music. It is based off real-life countercultures and it is reacting to the oppressive corporate landscape of Night City. Now hold that thought, because I'm going to talk about Star Wars. So why Star Wars? Oh, I wanted to talk about rebels and irony. If you are one of the three people who doesn't know what Star Wars is, the rebels, who are the good guys, and a space wizard team up to beat the evil space wizards and space Nazis, and that last part isn't even entirely inaccurate. The series creator George Lucas has said that he drew inspiration for the series antagonists from imperial and fascist powers such as the Nazis. Not only this, but for one of the battles in the final film Return of the Jedi, he compared the Empire to the USA and the rebel fighters to the Viet Cong. I bring all this up because the original Star Wars wasn't just a story about rebels and an evil oppressive regime. It was one that had direct correlations to real life, even critiquing the US itself, which makes the decision to sell the IP to Disney ironic. Disney, the embodiment of American corporate colonialism. There are a ton of other examples of this across different medias, far too many to go over, but there is a precedent of rebel stories being told by the real-life antithesis of their messaging. So with that said, back to Cyberpunk. It's corporate mess. What kind of corporate mess? The kind that makes millions of dollars off the premise of a game that didn't even release. $480 million to be specific, made from pre-orders. And for those unaware, the Cyberpunk that was advertised was not the Cyberpunk that was released. It was incredibly buggy, downright unplayable on older consoles, so much so that it was removed from the PlayStation Store, and missing countless features that had earlier been promised in demos that are now described as being almost entirely fake. There is also the question surrounding the working conditions of making the game, such as developing the game during COVID, and although developers say that there were pledges from leadership stating that crunch won't be necessary, they felt pressured to work long hours. So yeah, a corporate mess. And did CD Projekt face any repercussions, outside of their reputation dying, for selling and profiting off a broken lie of a game? Well, they paid $1.85 million in an out-of-court settlement when investors tried suing the company. $1.85 million isn't a lot compared to $480 million. So this leads me back to my original question. Truth is, I'm being a bit sneaky because I'm going to reframe the question. There is a sense of irony behind the rebel music in Cyberpunk 2077, But does it really matter? In a sense, yes, it matters that people were scammed out of money, it matters that people felt betrayed by a once beloved game developer, and it matters that talented game devs were rushed into making a game that could have been great from the start. But, in the game world, does that irony take anything away from the story being told? I don't think so. Is the in-game music still amazing and something the artist who worked on it should be proud of? Absolutely. In fact, the game isn't even necessarily pro-rebellion. It's an RPG defined by player choices. You don't have to rebel at all. You can be a corpo bootlicker if you want to, and multiple endings to the game are more focused on escapism and stopping fighting. You can find irony everywhere if you look for it, and I went looking for it in Cyberpunk's music. But to me, that doesn't change anything. I'm still going to enjoy the music, I'm still going to enjoy the game. Don't let some vague sense of irony ruin a piece of art for you. Not everything you do has to be a rebellion.